In today's episode, we are talking about how leadership can impact the success of behavior shifting learning experiences. To help me do that, we are joined by Gustavo Ramos, who is a leader passionate about cultivating self-leadership in others. His commitment to lifelong learning and desire to help others succeed defines his leadership style. In his current role as Director of Operations at Seriously Strong Training, which is a personal training company, he is responsible for developing his team of personal trainers to improve their craft. Gustavo holds a master's degree in exercise physiology from Florida State University and has thousands of hours of personal training experience. I had a chance to work with Gustavo as we developed the onboarding program for strength trainers at Seriously Strong. And I totally admired his commitment to learning. So I invited him here today to help us understand leadership's impact on the success of learning programs. So Gustavo, welcome. I'm very excited to have you and look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Jason. Like you said, I love learning, so I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Let's get into it. So let's start off with just describing your experience in helping people and companies shift their behavior toward permanent change.
Yeah, and this is something that, we always, which I loved, we went over our meetings on every time, talking about the realization that everyone really wants to do good for the companies that they work for. They want to feel like they're doing a good job. So us as the people that are helping with the training and development and learning, we need to realize that. I think a lot of times what I've noticed over the years working with other leaders and managers is it's really hard for them to realize that, right? It's okay, if we make this course, if we do these live sessions, then everyone should get it and everyone should make that permanent change because it's better for the organization. We're going to have more customers, more clients, right? But what we've noticed is, and not just in the personal training space with trainers, but with all kinds of organizations, is people want to do good, but we're not really giving them the full in-depth learning experience that they necessarily need, right? Because it's not only about the stuff that we develop as courses, the e-learning, the live sessions. It's having a good leader or mentor to sit down with them and be like, okay, you know that this is the change that we're trying to make, but you're struggling with it. So what are the things that are going on in the background? What are the deeper level behaviors or habits that you already have that we need to discuss and hopefully break? And the same thing that happens with a client who's trying to eat well, right? They know what to do to eat better and they know what to eat, but they really struggle to break those habits and behaviors and social influences, right? Same thing with a staff member. Maybe their customer service isn't where it needs to be. Maybe we need to dig deeper and be like, well, are you getting to work too early and you're tired and that's why you get upset when you're talking to customers, right? So it's really cool to see that alignment happen between learning and then the actual behaviors that come out of the organizations, the people that we work with. So I think the biggest thing in my experience is, okay, we need to dig deeper than great learning, but then dig deeper and figure out why each person might be struggling with certain parts of changing the behaviors and not just the learning part of it, right? Because I like that you always say it's not just about learning it, we actually have to change actions. And if the actions aren't changing, then really we haven't fully done what we needed to do. So that is the biggest thing that I've seen in my time doing all this as the biggest lesson for everyone.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really loved about working with you and actually your entire team. You guys really were committed and are still committed to seeing the actual changes in your learners. And what, in working with you directly, we had a lot of conversations about, I can help you build a learning experience, but it's not a lick it and stick it kind of a thing. And so in order for behaviors to change and organizational change to happen, you as the leader have a significant role in what happens after those experiences. And just so the audience is aware, we did a real comprehensive onboarding program where we had e-learning modules to get the content and then live sessions where you would work with them and they would demonstrate the skills so it was really robust. So it really required either mentors or leaders to follow through in order to make that happen. So I'm curious, so what are your thoughts on what are some ways that you can help leaders can help learners to create consistency as they're going through these changes? And when we're talking about change, it's literally these behavior changes, right? It's like, hey, I'm learning something new. That's a change for them. So how, as a leader, can you help them create that consistency?
That is a great question. I would say if a leader hasn't thought about that yet, right? Like if they're focusing mostly on, let's get a great course going, let's get some great SOPs. the first step that they need to take is they need to develop a relationship with each of their team members. Because if you don't have that relationship, and I have a ton of stories about this, you're not going to be able to realize what is the underlying, like I said earlier, what is the underlying resistance to change that team member is having. They might learn the information, but they're struggling to do it. So you have to build that great relationship as a leader for that person to feel comfortable enough for you to ask them, hey, what's really going on here? And do you agree with this, right? Or do you disagree with this? Are you trying to do it and you're not successful? What's going on day to day in your workflow, your own personal systems and habits to make it happen? So I would say that's the place to start. I mean, there's a lot of things underneath that, but if you don't have that relationship to begin with, all the other tips I can give you would be really tough to actually implement.
That's a really interesting point because, we talk about that too, just when we're creating learning experiences, you got to know your learners. And I think, my master's is in organizational leadership, and what our mentor from that program told us is that in order to be a great leader, you have to know yourself and know your people. And I think, honestly, of the 2 years I went through that program, that's what stuck with me the most, and actually has been most real world application, because you do got to know those two things. And that's one thing. You're right. If a leader, we put a leader in quotes, if you're not trying to learn about your people, then you're going to miss the mark, no matter what training program you implement, because they are human. And actually, we talk about this a lot, that learning is unique in some ways, but everybody learns by doing, right? But the things that you're talking about, which is what's really interesting to me, is what creates a uniqueness. Like, if I'm stressed, or maybe I didn't get any sleep last night or whatever, then learning isn't really going to occur. And so I'm actually for you, I'm curious what you have seen maybe yourself miss, or maybe other leaders miss, as you're trying to help people learn within your organization. What are common misses?
Yeah, I think the most common miss is structuring everything the same. So like we've talked about this, right? Like the live sessions that we did, and for everyone that's listening, a live session for what Jason did for our team and our organization was, you're having this leader or mentor present information, but it's usually a discussion. It's not a PowerPoint slide. It's not reading off SOPs. It's a really good discussion. And we created some great questions to then actually get these learners talking about the information that they learned. Do they agree? Do they disagree? How does it actually stack into the prior knowledge they have, right? So I think a lot of times we miss out on those discussions, and we can build those discussions into learning, which is really cool. But and this is how I went through school, right? If you just get presented information, some people learn really well like that. But most of the time, once you get into actual paying jobs, that is not a great way to learn, because someone is already stuck in their ways of doing something, right? So I think that's the main thing I see is, okay, we're gonna hire this consulting company or do this great stuff and create all these courses, and that's it. And it's just information, right? And we're gonna organize it really well, make it pretty, but that's not what it is, because everyone learns in different ways, but then also, like you said, learns in different environments as well. And if we don't have those discussions, then they can't get that information into the right areas of how they're thinking about everything else, and kind of all tie it together as well, right? Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen.
Yeah, and I would argue nobody learns that way, but it is a good way to pass tests. Some people can pass tests by exactly, but and honestly, and you and I work together a lot on that. I know you even as part of us working together, you were adjusting some of the way you were engaging your team, just even in the other trainings outside of what the scope of our project was, because you were really trying to then say, okay, what are those behaviors? And I think that honestly does a lot of what you're talking about. If a leader can start thinking about in terms of what do we want our learners to be able to do, rather than the information that they need, and you know how I can be triggered off of thinking about the school system, right? A lot of our conversations for me being like, oh man, that's from the school system. But people have a paradigm of what learning is in the workforce based on the education system.